Hey everyone, thanks for joining today's webinar, Transportation Safety by Design. My name is Haley Golub and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Streetlight Data. Before we get started, I want to let you all know that this webinar is being recorded. We'll send out a link to the recording and the webinar slides in about 24 hours. If you have any questions during the webinar, please ask us using GoToWebinar's Q&A feature. You should see this module on the right-hand side control panel. Just type in your question and we'll answer it at the end of the presentation. Today, I'm joined by Becca Sial, Solutions Engineer, who will be presenting as well. I'm excited to walk you through some details around creating transportation safety by design and walk through the main themes that we are hearing in the safety world and how you can tackle some of the challenges. As we all know, President Biden recently announced the American Job Plan, which includes $115 billion for modernizing roads, and out of that, $20 billion to improve road safety for all users, including increases to existing safety programs and a new Safe Streets for All program to fund state and local Vision Zero plans and other improvements to reduce crashes and fatalities, especially for cyclists and pedestrians. This is really important. Calling out programs such as Safe Streets for All and highlighting Vision Zero means that there is a concerted effort to tackle transportation safety head-on. Since this is top of mind federally, we know that this also trickles down locally, and we are excited to share some strategies for how to plan for these initiatives. Diving into safety a bit more, transportation safety and mitigation tactics are more than just measuring crashes. That's a good start, but with just crash data, you're not capturing the whole story. It is important to understand other contexts surrounding crashes, such as traffic activity in the area, speed, and more, and to begin to identify solutions. We all know this, but reducing transportation-related accidents can save both lives and dollars. As you can see on the slide, there is a high cost associated with traffic deaths. And how great would it be if we can reinvest the money lost from traffic accidents into better resources for our states and cities? Not only does tackling safety require us to look deeper than just crash data, but it is important to look at safety through a multimodal lens. You need insights that consider more than just vehicles. After all, take a look around you, especially during the pandemic. Cars aren't the only thing on the road, and every one of us is a pedestrian. Looking at the agenda, we're going to briefly touch upon our data sources, highlight some interesting insights about pedestrian safety from our new pedestrian ebook, call out some of the safety hot topics that we are hearing from our customers and the industry, and what tools we have to tackle them. Next, we'll be going through a live demo in the Streetlight Insight platform to show you some tactical solutions, and we'll close out with a Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, if you have questions throughout this, please feel free to submit them, and we will tackle them at the end. So let's get started with a quick overview of Streetlight. Who are we and what do we do? Streetlight Data is a software company that leverages the power of big data, transportation industry knowledge, and advanced data science to provide on-demand transportation metrics. One of the greatest things about Streetlight is that we can deliver our metrics and suite of analysis tools to any computer with a browser and internet connection without having to go into the field, something that was critical for our customers in the early months of the COVID crisis, but certainly useful at any time. Our platform allows for access to metrics from a few weeks to a few years ago, all at your fingertips. This can dramatically reduce the time of project analysis over traditional methodology, particularly on large complex projects. You can now have data in minutes to hours instead of weeks to months. So how do we do this? Well, every month, Streetlight processes over 40 billion anonymized location records from smartphones and in-vehicle GPS navigation devices. Our proprietary data processing engine, RouteScience, transforms them into contextualized, normalized, aggregated, multi-mode trips. Streetlight Insight, our product, lets you analyze how vehicles, bikes, pedestrians, trucks, bus and rail passengers move on every corridor to and from every census block. Users can create origin-destination metrics, analyze top routes to and from any location, calculate monthly or hourly traffic volumes, perform select link analyses, understand attributes of the trips and travelers, and much more. And now I'm going to share some insights from our new pedestrian safety ebook. Dangerous by Design recently rated Orlando the most dangerous in the US for pedestrians for the second consecutive year. Orlando is a sample of any city in a year when pedestrian fatalities increased 24% nationwide. In our new pedestrian safety ebook, we analyze Orlando's pedestrian travel data for safety insights, and I'll share some of the highlights. We divided Orlando into equal-sized areas, or zones, so we could compare apples to apples. These two zones have about the same number of pedestrian deaths, so where do you concentrate safety measures? Holden Heights has one more death, but downtown has more pedestrian activity overall. Do you prioritize downtown because it has more pedestrian activity and gets more attention? Do you prioritize Holden Heights because it has a higher number of crashes? Or do you give both equal attention? Combining the data gave us an important insight. When comparing total pedestrian activity to crashes, Holden Heights is 19 times riskier than downtown. So Holden Heights is a priority not because it has one more pedestrian death, but because the ratio of pedestrian travel to deaths is so much higher than downtown. Why is this important? Orlando, like the other cities we analyzed, saw huge shifts in pedestrian travel last year. Some suburban areas saw double the amount of pedestrian activity than the year before. That's a massive increase in risk for neighborhoods with pedestrian fatalities. To view more details and view the top 20 cities ranked by highest amount of pedestrian activity, check out the pedestrian safety ebook, and I included the link on the bottom right at streetlightdata.com/ped-safety/ebook. Now, shifting gears a bit, we're gonna dive into the top 4 safety hot topics, featured more in our new practitioner's safety handbook, and Becca's gonna do a live demo of these examples later on. We know that safety initiatives are a top priority for agencies of all size, whether at the federal, state, city, region, or local level. We want to help you spend time on improving safety and spend less time and money on the data collection. After chatting with customers, transportation industry professionals, lobbyists, and more, we have distilled the daunting safety challenge into some themes. We see 4 primary ways that a data-driven, multimodal approach can help planners prioritize where to invest in safety. The first is identify focus areas to meet Vision Zero goals. The second, get safety assessment data for complete street policies. The third, streamline data collection to fulfill MIRE requirements and safety performance management. And the fourth is access on-demand traffic data to power projects for maintenance of traffic planning. This presentation is just going to give you a taste of some of these topics. We encourage you to check out our new safety handbook for practitioners, and the link is below. It's streetlightdata.com/safety-handbook, and then you can dive into all of these topics and also see examples from some of our customers. Instant access to metrics for any road or intersection can help solve transportation safety challenges. As we mentioned earlier, tackling safety is more than just vehicle volume and crash volume. With Streetlight Insight, you also have access to speed data, multimodal traffic, OD, routing, demographics, and more. And reach out to us to learn about all of our safety offerings. We also have a partnership with Ford Mobility where you can get access to Ford's Safety Insights, which is a platform that can help you be more proactive about tackling safety, and it also includes powerful data sources such as connected vehicle data. Diving into the first topic a bit more, Vision Zero is a strategy for eliminating traffic fatalities and severe injuries by influencing system-wide practices, policies, and designs to lessen the severity of crashes. Streetlight Insight allows you to achieve Vision Zero goals with the following analyses. Overlay bike and pedestrian OD data with your crash data to build safety exposure models. View traffic volumes and speed data for corridor safety assessments. Access speed data to understand why VMT is decreasing, but crashes are increasing during COVID, something we've heard from a lot of our customers. Get TMC data to identify intersections primed for traffic control devices, such as signal placement, roundabouts, etc. Run before and after studies to determine the impact of safety infrastructure changes and prove countermeasure effectiveness. Diving into another theme, many public officials at the local, regional, state, and federal levels are working to build better bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. The concept of complete streets is now mainstream in transportation, with planners striving to design and build streets that safely accommodate all transportation modes and users. Streetlight Insight allows you to analyze top OD pairs for bike and ped traffic to build bike and pedestrian route heat maps, view where bicycle traffic is happening to prioritize where to invest in active transportation infrastructure, layer on demographics to diagnose the social equity impact for safety initiatives, measure the effectiveness of complete street projects with before and after studies, and understand traffic volume and speed to justify road diet and traffic calming initiatives. And now, tackling another safety topic that is very top of mind, planning for work zone safety or maintenance of traffic planning. Safety isn't just about protecting those who use the road, but also the workers who maintain our nation's transportation infrastructure. Use multimodal transportation data to understand the peak hours of traffic conditions surrounding work zones in order to properly plan for safe and efficient mitigation strategies to proactively plan temporary traffic control. Improve the flow of traffic through work zone areas by identifying alternative routes for detour planning. And get the most up-to-date volume on roads, especially roads heavily impacted by dynamic trends like COVID, to understand if a full road shutdown during construction may be feasible, where before only partial shutdowns were allowed. This both improves safety and reduces costs. Also, analyze the efficacy of enhanced road work in work zones by performing before and after studies to diagnose if the road work improved mobility conditions and to view the impact of construction detours. As I mentioned earlier, to dive into all of these examples with screenshots and examples of how customers are doing this in the real world, check out our safety handbook that is linked below. And now I'm going to hand it over to Becca.
Thanks, Haley. My name is Becca Seal, and I'm the solution engineer for the Southeast here at Streetlight Data. In this section of the presentation, we'll be talking about some of the ways that you can use Streetlight Insight to answer your safety questions. We'll be focusing on some of the examples from the pedestrian safety and the safety data ebooks that are available on our website. We'll be going over examples such as pedestrian exposure, Vision Zero, as well as work zone safety. And we'll be focusing on our examples in the Orlando area. Next slide. This is the example that Haley spoke about previously, which is understanding pedestrian exposure in two neighborhoods in Orlando, overlaying these zones with pedestrian crash data. And as Haley said before, this is a way to measure where the greatest risk is for pedestrians. And while this was created as a custom project by our engineering team, but in the next example, I'll show you how you can use the zone library in Streetlight Insight to better understand, to be able to create this project in the platform and be able to better understand pedestrian exposure in your community. Next slide. So using the zone library within the Streetlight Insight platform, we're able to select geographies to be able to run our analyses. In this example, I selected census block groups in the downtown Orlando area, as well as the Holden Heights area, to be able to understand that pedestrian level of activity. I'm also going to look at particular time of day, which is Saturday and Sunday afternoons, to be able to see what that activity is on the weekends. As you can see, you can compare the different census block groups by their pedestrian level of activity across both of these neighborhoods. The darker the yellow, the more pedestrian activity we see compared to some of the lighter gray zones within the Holden Heights and Orlando area. You can also look at it in a 3D visualization to be able to understand the magnitude of pedestrian activity in this way as well. All of this data is downloadable, and you can overlay it with crash data in a GIS platform of your choice as well. Next slide. Now, many communities right now are looking at Vision Zero to be able to eliminate severe injuries and fatalities on their roadways. And while the last example I showed helps you understand pedestrian exposure, what we really like to look at when we talk about Vision Zero is to be able to drill down another layer and to be able to look at segment level pedestrian activity, which is what you're seeing here. In the downtown Orlando area, I selected different segments across the area to be able to measure that pedestrian level of activity. As you can see, the darker pink, thicker lines are where we see more pedestrian activity around the park and downtown area compared to some of the paler blue, thinner lines that are in some of the neighborhoods. And so you're able to identify where those pedestrians are. And using big data, we're also able to layer on our traveler attributes. Now, our traveler attributes are able to tell us the census head of household demographic data for those pedestrians in this analysis. And we can understand the head of the education, family status, income, race, demographics for those pedestrians, as well as their trip purpose. So with this data, we're not only able to understand where the pedestrians are, but we're able to add an equity lens to be able to understand who the pedestrians are in this analysis when we're looking at where to put our safety measures for pedestrians. Now, in this example, we were focused on pedestrians, but that's only one piece of the puzzle when we're talking about Vision Zero. We also had to talk about vehicles and where pedestrians might be more at risk for those conflicts with vehicles on the roadway. So using the same network, we can also use this to analyze vehicular data and understand where those conflict points might be in a greater detail. Next slide. Using our segment analysis, we're able to understand the average volume as well as the average speed for each of these roadway segments that we're also able to measure the pedestrian activity. So they're a one-to-one match when we want to analyze it further in and outside the platform as well. We can also look at different times of day, comparing AM peak and PM peak, as well as different day types, such as the weekends or the weekdays. Another thing we can layer on is our segment speed distribution. And that can tell us not only the average speed, but also how the percentage of volume that are going at higher speed bins, which you can customize within the analysis. So pairing these two metrics together, the pedestrian and the vehicular data, helps us get a complete picture of where we should be targeting Vision Zero initiatives across different roadway networks in any different city or community in the continental US. Next slide. Our next example is going to talk about work zone safety, which is important not only for those of us on the roadway itself, but also the workers who are working to make sure that our roadways and transit networks are staying at a state of good repair. In this example, we're going to talk about the I-4 project and some of the closures involved with that in Orlando. For those of you who aren't familiar with the I-4 project, it's a mega project that is rebuilding the interstate within the existing right-of-way in the Orlando area. And part of that is going to include different roadway closures on the local roads so that they can rebuild this roadway safely. And that includes having to close some of those local roads around I-4, like Colonial Street, which goes under I-4 as an underpass. And on the left so what we can do to make sure that we're planning the correct detours on these when we have to close these local streets, we can use Streetlight's top routes analysis. The top routes analysis helps you understand what the top routes are to and from a particular zone. In this instance, the underpass, the Colonial Street underpass under I-4. On the left-hand side, you can see what the top routes are in green to the underpass, and what the top routes are on the right-hand side from leaving the underpass. And what we can see is that while a lot of the trips are on Colonial Street, there are some other routes where we could possibly plan for detours that already have existing traffic and limit the number of detours that are maybe on local roads or residential streets, which could cause safety issues with those who are living there, and because these roadways aren't prepared for the amount of traffic that might be displaced onto them. So using this analysis, we're able to not only keep worker safety safe by closing these areas and making sure they can do their jobs, but also keeping residents and drivers safe by making sure that we are selecting the correct detour areas and making sure that everybody is safe while we work on our roadways. And next slide. That's the end of the demo, so I'll pass it over to Haley to start our Q&A.
Great, thanks, Becca. I'm just going to go to one more slide so you guys can see some links, but feel free to ask questions about any of the content that you have seen today. We have some questions that already came through, but please submit them with the Q&A feature in the right-hand side of the module. You'll see that over there. And so we're going to tackle some of the questions. So the first question, I'll direct this one at Becca, is can you speak more about the data sources and how you test for reliability and validity issues?
Sure. So one of our primary data sources is location-based service data, LBS data, which typically comes from smartphone devices, including the apps that are looking at where the location of those devices are. Now, the question always is, how do we actually test our data to know that it's accurate? And the answer is we're constantly testing all of the metrics that we release. We have a plethora of white papers that I know Haley works on consistently to make sure that we can provide these. And what we do is we really test out our data against traditional methods, such as continuous counters or boarding and alighting on bus routes, to be able to make sure that our data is matching real world travel patterns. So I invite you to go to our website, streetlightdata.com, and look at each of these white papers to see the different validations that we do for each of our metrics.
Great, thanks, Becca. We had a question about the zones in the Orlando study and hexagons, and are there other types of zone sizes that you can use? And I think this is a good opportunity for us to let folks know we have the option to do custom zones. So kind of as Becca mentioned, you can upload different shape files. In this scenario is hexagon zones, but we also have a zone library where you can pre-select any zone type. So it's either a standard area, whether it's a traffic analysis zone, census block group, OSM line segment. You can also select zip codes as well. So we have preset zones that you can choose from for those of you that don't want to upload your customized zones, but for those that are looking for very specific sizes or shapes, such as hexagons, you're able to upload those directly to the platform as well. Cool. All right, so we have some other questions trickling in. Keep them coming. We have a question, I'll give this one to Becca, and it's about, can you elaborate more about the demographic data and how you guys get demographic data for pedestrians?
That's a great question. So what we're looking at is that, first of all, Streetlight has very, very stringent privacy policies to make sure that we aren't invading anybody's privacy, including, we also have a VP of privacy that makes sure that we are following all legal rules across all the states and federally. But the way that we understand the demographic data of within our pedestrian metrics is understanding the device's inferred home location and what the census, so looking at that census block group and being able to understand the demographics at that level to be able to infer what the demographics are for our pedestrian, vehicular, bus, rail, and bike modes.
Great, thanks, Becca. We have a question that came through about, can you track people on bikes the way you do pedestrian and vehicles? I think the question is, do we offer the same type of bike metrics that we also offer for pedestrians and vehicles? And even though the examples that we shared today were pedestrian examples, we're releasing some more a bike report in the next few weeks, actually, that has some interesting safety insights about bikes, but you're also able to run the analyses with the bike mode as well. We also have actually bus and rail modes separately, not related to the safety conversation, for those that are also interested in transit. We have another question that came in about Canada, and the question is, does our privacy policy extend to Canada? And maybe this is an opportunity, Becca, to just talk about our Canada offering.
Yes, so all of our metrics are also available in Canada as well. And our privacy policy does extend to Canada. And we have a lot of users, and we're very proud that we're able to provide those metrics there as well. But yes, the same privacy policies extend to those areas too.
Great, thanks, Becca. And then we have a question about equity and making sure we have comprehensive access to a sample size that across the population. So Becca, can you speak a little bit about equity in our sample size representativeness?
Absolutely. So I'll start first with some of the third-party research that we've looked at, especially by Pew Research that has looked at that smartphone ownership across different demographics in the United States. And what we've seen is that that most people are owning smartphones. A lot of times it can be the link to an internet connection. And it's pretty standard across different socioeconomic groups, race, as well as different urban versus rural. Now, we at Streetlight are constantly looking at our sample to make sure it's representative, also choosing the best data sources that are going to be most representative. And if you're interested in learning more about that, we do have a white paper that specifically explores our sample and compares it to different metrics and across urban versus rural, different groups as well. So if you're interested in learning more about how representative our sample size is, please look at that white paper on our website, which is a bigger and more representative sample size.
Great, thanks, Becca. And a question asked about where we can get the reference for that research. And yeah, as Becca said, all our white papers are on the website, along with a lot of case studies for some of the examples that we went through. So someone asked a question about work zone safety specifically, and asking if we have any recommendations for proactively looking at work zone safety opposed to just reactive. And some of the examples that we shared are this notion of understanding. So the great thing about Streetlight is we have historical data. So what that means is you can look at the information from days, weeks, months ago. And so from the perspective of work zone safety planning for various areas that you're trying to tackle for work zones, you're able to pull information for traffic activity that's been happening. So you could look at different peak hours. So for example, you could look at run a zone activity analysis and see what was the traffic going through that area. And then you can actually see with our time distribution chart, what are the peak hours. So that can also dictate when you want to potentially close a road for work zone safety. And then our top routes feature, which Becca shared as well, you're able to see what are top routes in that area to understand what are different ways that you can proactively communicate and message their different detour options for folks, so they're able to avoid the work zone safety. So there's tons of examples, and our safety handbook that I mentioned before also has a couple more examples of tackling this work zone safety proactively. Cool. So it looks like we've tackled all of the questions that came through. If anyone has any more questions that pop up, please feel free to reach out to us and check out all the resources on our website that we've talked through. As I mentioned, those two kind of deep dives that we did tackled our new pedestrian safety ebook, and then also our safety practitioner's handbook. Both are available on the website, so just check them out, and you're able to view all of this and a lot more customer examples. So thanks, everyone, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.